to thank the Harvard Graduate School of Education and the AOCC for inviting us to be a part of this beautiful event. Looking around this room, such a beautifully diverse group of people, all vested in the same message, which rang in our video. I am here. You're here. They're here. I'm here. My name is Kellye Britton. I'm the program director for the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project. An investment of time, energy, and love, as you all are aware, what it takes to work with young people and inspire the future. How fitting a theme, homecoming, past, present, and future. Because for a lot of us, education has been our home. It's the place where we've been able to grow and show people what we're made of without being strapped down by where we come from, what we look like, what our names are. So today we invite you in for a conversation, a little different than your typical keynote, where we're going to speak to these young people, the reason why we're all here, to find out exactly what's going on in the minds of young people today and how we as educators, instructors, teacher assistants, friends, family, loved ones can assist in making the future as bright as possible from an educational standpoint. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to the students we have here today, and then we're going to jump right into a conversation. Does that sound good? All right, let's do it. We'll start here. Marlon? Go ahead, introduce yourself.
My name is Marlon West, and I'm a junior at Booker T. Washington High School in Atlanta. All right.
Well, I guess you're done. My name is Maya Hadley. I'm also a junior at Grady High School.
I'm Peyton Gunner. I'm a junior at your charter school.
My name is Osazi Al-Khalik, and I'm a senior that attends Maynard Hobart Jackson High School.
My name is Jordan Thomas, a senior also at Grady High School in Atlanta.
Okay, so now you know a little bit about them. We're all, of course, hailing from Atlanta, Georgia. It was definitely, yes, definitely an interesting experience getting here, but when things come together like weather, to get you into this space, you know that you're meant to be here. And so we thank you again for taking the time, and this is the last one of the night, and you're hanging in here, and we appreciate it. Let's start off, Osazi, let's talk about inclusivity.
Yeah, so again, my name is Osazi Al-Khalik. I'm a senior that attends Maynard Hobart Jackson High School, and today I not only want to talk about inclusivity, but also the concept of black privilege and what that means of a student of my position. So normally when you think of black privilege, you automatically think of its antithesis, white privilege, roughly defined as the innate sense of advantage given to a person of white descent. But when I talk about black privilege that stems from my experience, I'm not basing my definition of black privilege, based off that sense of concept. I'm more defining black privilege as the ability to create access and opportunity for other African American minorities, to position them for success, not only for themselves, but also to create success for other African American minorities as well. But there exists a problem, and that problem is the fact that that sense of black privilege is overshadowed by what is known as educational inequity and educational inequality, defined as the unequal distribution of academic resources or educational access and opportunity. But what does that look like? And what does that look like for an actual minority student in this educational system? For me, I experienced educational inequity in attending middle school in Minnesota. Now, my time there was great. I had unlimited resources at my disposal. I got to attend a nationally ranked middle school, and I could dress however I wanted to. I could bring whatever I wanted into the school. Yet, let's juxtapose that position to my time in Atlanta. Well, the first step taken inside of my educational institution was a step taken towards a metal detector, where there stands an actual security guard with their little wands that you may see at the airport, waiting to pat me down, to check my book bag, saying you can't bring this inside the school, or you may not be able to dress this type of way. So that's what that educational inequity stemmed from. But it was deeper than that. It was the fact that at that school, there were no basic fundamental educational resources for students, such as textbooks and other necessary materials. And the fact that the teachers at my school couldn't even teach to the fullest of their capability because they were overshadowed by that stigma that was the cheating scandal in Atlanta. And if you were not familiar with that scandal, it was when teachers basically made up grades to give to their students in order to matriculate them past high school, thereby making them unprepared for the real world. So in my position as a minority student, how do I combat that sense of educational inequity in order to obtain that concept of black privilege used to help students that are also minorities as well? Well, normally that would mean to take advantage of any and every opportunity presented to you, whether big or small, which I feel like anybody here can relate to. But what about those minority students who aren't able to create those opportunities? What about those minority students who don't have that access? Who do they go to? Who do they have? Who is their savior? And so, for me, my savior was the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project, that Atlanta-based pipeline program created by my instructor, Mr. Brandon Fleming, that trained us to be not only scholars, but also leaders in our own right. But the program for me wasn't about necessarily debate. I didn't join it for that, you know. That was a plus that I get to go to Harvard. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? It wasn't about going to Harvard either. For me, the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project was symbolic of the hope that none of my dreams that I wanted to achieve would ever be far-fetched again.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you. That I would be able to obtain any passion that I had because I had a structural system set in education that was specifically designed for me, an underprivileged minority student. And in doing so, it was not only enough for us to have that black privilege, but we wanted to give that to other minority students as well. So we designed community workshops where we developed our own curriculum about debate and public speaking to give to other students in Metro Atlanta the Harvard education that we had obtained ourselves. And in doing so, we were able to represent a cause bigger than ourselves. We were able to use our privilege that we had gained from joining this program and debating at Harvard and to give it back to the community and to reinvest, because that's what privilege is for minority students in our position. And that's all minority students as well. And that's privilege for all minority students as well. And so in doing so, throughout my time in the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project, I learned some of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned before. My teacher, Mr. Brandon Fleming, taught all of us that in this world, there exists a moral responsibility to be intrusive in places that are not inclusive. Fundamentally teaching us to break that glass ceiling and to step through that glass barrier that decides how and who is able to get access and opportunity based off race and class. He taught us to build as we climb, meaning that any advantage given to us was an advantage that we needed to use to give to other minority students as well. And so why is this message important? Why is this so significant? Because the goal of this program and what it symbolizes is the goal to create privilege for any and every minority student in every community. I'm not talking about just black privilege. I'm talking about Asian privilege as well, Latino privilege, Native American privilege, minority privilege. That is the goal of this program, and that is why we stand here today. If you need proof that this program works and that this structure works, you need to look no farther than the students sitting on this panel right now. I was able to see firsthand how this program was able to use that sense of black privilege in order to position us for success. I was able to see a student from this program use his position of black privilege to teach to other members in the community about debate and public speaking as well. I was able to see a student from this program be the first student body president of this inaugural class. I was able to see a student from this program embody a sense of resolve and courage enough to use what he learned in this program in order to have the courage to apply to Harvard. And on December 13th, at 7:00 p.m., I saw that student get in. I'm that student. And not only get into Harvard, but also use the positioning of getting into Harvard in order to inspire other minorities across Metro Atlanta to say that this is possible, that this far-fetched dream is now obtainable, and that I've set the groundwork, or we've set the groundwork, for you to follow in footsteps, for you to obtain this dream. And so if you remember anything today, remember that sense of moral responsibility that my teacher instilled in all of us, that we have a responsibility to be intrusive in places that are not inclusive in order to inspire and motivate the next generation of minorities to succeed as well, so that they can climb that ladder of success that we had to fly to reach. Thank you so much.
What can I say? Not much. You'll find throughout this keynote presentation that I get a little misty-eyed. I may dab a little here in the corner, but I didn't wear mascara, so it won't be a tragedy. But what I will say is this: Osazi Al-Khalik, you amaze me on a regular basis. When we talk about inclusivity, a lot of times it's a catchphrase. We use it to say, hey, see us, include us. But we rarely talk about what it looks like, how you become an advocate of inclusivity, and the product of it. And so that's in part why we're here today, because it makes it even that more real, the charge that each of us have. So along those same lines of inclusivity, we have to look at the barriers on the way to having more inclusive environments. We call it beating the odds, and Marlon's going to talk to us about that.
Again, I'm Marlon West from Booker T. Washington High School, and I think my friend Osazi deserves extra round of applause for that. That was great. All right, so beating the odds. So there are about 400 high schools in the state of Georgia. And out of that 400, my high school is ranked 384th. Located in the west side of Atlanta, students in this type of environment are normally not worried about getting good grades or even going to school at all, because they're blinded by the fact that they have to provide for their families. They have to seek out ways to create income for the families in order for them to survive. So like going to school is really not important. And although I'm still in high school, a lot of the people that I grew up with are already dead or in jail. So it's easy to look into this community and be like, I wouldn't go there to find a student who can speak publicly, think critically, or even debate competitively. But why? Because oftentimes in these situations, the students do not lack the capability, but it's the access and exposure that is missing. So after being accepted into this program and being able to cultivate my leadership skills, being able to enhance my critical thinking and my public speaking through debate, I was able to be a part of something greater than myself, and a part of something that made history last summer in Harvard. This same black kid from the west side of Atlanta went back home and created his school's first debate team.
All right.
And after creating his school's first debate team, in their first tournament went undefeated, right? So look, the proof's there. Students in these often overlooked communities, the only thing that they're missing is the opportunity and exposure. And given this opportunity and exposure, they can and will succeed. Thank you.
Wow, pulling at the heartstrings here, y'all. It is extremely important for us to acknowledge, all of the roadblocks and barriers that face students across multiple communities, lacking resources, lacking educators who realize the diamonds in the rough. Thank goodness that we found Marlon and he found us. This young man has been a very capable, willing, and eager leader. And I think that when we're in a room full of educators and we're talking about the charge for the future, it's for us to pay it forward and create the next set of leaders. That said, we also have to look at the other side of the gamut. So we talk about underprivileged students thinking automatically that we're talking about learning deficit, right? Well, in a lot of cases, you're talking about gifted young people who have not been discovered, as it were. Peyton, you want to talk to us about what that looks like and what the charge is for the future with regard to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. I've been in the gifted program in my school since I was in kindergarten. And I wish that I could tell you I remember more from this whole experience except for 2 lines on a creativity test that I drew a little dinosaur on. And I got to my sophomore year in high school, and I hadn't really seen anything come from my title. But I could feel the weight that came with it. I would ask my teachers if they could correct the questions on my test because I didn't understand why I got them wrong. And they look in my face and tell me that they wouldn't. Because that's just like my generation. That's why we have anxiety. We're grabbing for points. And my grade was good enough, and I shouldn't want to go from a 98 to 100. And I would always think, I don't want enough, I want my best. And I withhold my test scores from my peers because I was trained to believe that my very title was offensive. And they'd immediately assume that I was better than them or that I was smarter than them, when to me it just meant that I could do addition a little earlier. And then I joined the Harvard Diversity Project in 2018. And I was absolutely ecstatic to be surrounded by so many like-minded, intelligent African-American students that looked and talked just like me. But I was also really conflicted because I had never been faced with the challenge of should I compete or should I beat or should I stay exactly where I am? And I don't really remember what I decided to do, but I remember a question being asked to the class. And I got up and I thought I was going to give the best answer in the world. It was going to be awe-inspiring, and then it would be like, that's a gifted student. But what ended up happening was Mr. Fleming told me to sit down. He said that I was wrong and to rethink my answer. And I remember being awestruck because for the first time in my life, the bar had been moved from right above my head to being 2 feet above it, and no one had ever taught me how to jump. Or maybe it was that I had never asked. And I felt a wave of disappointment because I realized that enough had become enough for me too. And that just opening my mouth wouldn't always be impressive. Fast forward to my junior year in high school, and I feel an even more intense sense of agitation. Because now that I know what it's like to be pushed, to be motivated, to be inspired, I know exactly what it's like to be static and forced to say exactly where I am and told that enough is okay and mediocre is okay. But it's not. And I actually listened to my frustration and the isolation that I feel. And for clarification, I'm not saying that students that aren't gifted are any less apt. I think the same lack of push and lack of confidence that I was given is the same for them too. But remember that every single student, no matter the academic aptitude, can go way farther than they think they can, than you think they can. And let the students that want to go above and beyond make you better. Be better for the students that want to do good, even though, although, and because of, even though people stand in their way, although they're called names or not treated the way they should be, and because they want to change the world. Thank you.
It just got real. We may need to pass around some tissue, because the reality is that we are in an environment in and outside of the classroom that says, like Peyton said, that mediocre is okay. Thank goodness that this group of young people and several like them don't believe that to be true. So what does that mean for educators in the 21st century and going forward? How do you extrapolate that excellence? How do you mold it so that it pays it forward? What does it mean? Maya, let's talk about what we'd like to see in the classroom from our educators.
Okay. Hi, my name is Maya again, if you missed it. Have you guys ever had a student who's constantly asking questions? Whether it be, why are we learning this? Why is this important? Why are we still learning the Pythagorean theorem, but we don't know how to pay taxes? Why have we continued to learn about the same 4 civil rights activists, yet we don't know why our government was shut down? Yeah, that's me. I was constantly asking the questions. I wanted someone to explain to me why I sat in a desk from 8:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon, 5 days out of the week, and couldn't use more than half of what I learned outside of the classroom. I wanted someone to explain to me why I sat in a desk and couldn't apply what I was learning. I wanted more. I wanted something different. So I applied to the Harvard Debate Council Diversity Project, and little did I know then the impact that this program and Mr. Fleming would have on my life as a student, as a person, and as a member of society where it does not encourage passing and pushing past the status quo. So I remember on the first day in the video, if you saw Mr. Fleming dancing on the table, that was something that he regularly did. I was sitting on the front row of the first day of class, and keep in mind, I'm nervous, I don't know what to expect, and he literally hops on a table, and he yells at us, if you are not ready to start a movement, if you are not ready to be here, please get up, because there are students who are outside of the classroom who want to take your seat. And so I'm thinking there, I'm like, am I ready? Do I want to start a movement? And so from that day on, I told myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to push myself further than what I'd ever done before. And the energy that Mr. Fleming brought into the room is unmatched. I'd never had a teacher who believed more in students than sometimes they did in themselves. And so seeing that really started a passion and ignited and inspired me to want to learn, to want to go to school, to want to get that education and to do what I could do to, surpass that status quo. And so I want to leave you with this. When I think of education, I think of it like a car, right? You have the gas and you have the engine, you have the parts. So you pour the gas into the car and the car moves, right? So when you think of it like this, I think of the engine like the teacher, right? The teacher is supposed to ignite, motivate the students. And if you don't do that, the student will never reach its highest and fullest potential. So I leave with you today, how are you going to inspire and change the life of the students that you teach? Thank you.
It's so important to understand expectation. A lot of students come to school wanting more. More than their home life can provide, more than money can provide, or status, or an exit. So the question becomes, how will you, in what ways will you be the power that drives your students beyond the point that they are? What can you say? What will you do? I think that with this program, what I have gleaned is that it cannot be an exception. It must become the rule, particularly for students of color. When you enter into a room and your instructor can milli rock, but can also get down with Socrates and Aristotle, and expects you to be able to do the same, it changes education entirely. Because it becomes about learning self and the books, learning about the government and how to pay taxes. It becomes more than just what happens in that room. It becomes about the world. It becomes a charge for the student to determine their place in it and move forward. That's the job. That's the passion. So while we're on the subject of milli rocking, one of our primary themes, in order to ensure that our students feel comfortable being in an educational space, because obviously it's easier to penetrate when the walls are down, right? We have a hashtag, and it's scholarship meets culture, which I've heard different iterations of this theme and read them in the literature from the AOCC, which is that it requires more than just the ability to impart knowledge, but to understand the group that you're instructing, the nuances of your student body. Because when you do that, you open up all kinds of windows and doors for them to explore their particular place and their particular situation and how it fits into the whole, right? So, Jordan, let's talk about how we take it from the rhetoric to the actual.
Awesome. Again, my name is Jordan Thomas, a student at Grady High School in Atlanta. And if you all know anything about Atlanta, we love rap music, right? So specifically, the Migos group, trio. If you don't know, 3 people from Atlanta, Quavo, Offset, Takeoff. That's the Migos. So like when I reference them, just know. But I bring that up because in one song by the Migos called We the Ones, Takeoff says a really important line, but it's not very well known. You'd really only know the line if you love the song. It goes, "Real trap boy, I can sell sand to a beach." Now you're probably wondering, why would I even bring that? I'm at Harvard, why am I quoting Takeoff? One, I'm not encouraging trapping whatsoever, but 2, he really explains how he uses his words to make anything happen, no matter how impossible it may seem. And that's exactly what education should be doing. Now, let me think of an example. One second. You know what? This is hard to bring out, but I have a pen on me right now. Here it goes. It's actually a pretty nice pen. It writes very well. Thank you, Ms. Britton.
I need that back, Jordan.
But to give some contextualization, what if you all needed to write a check or write a signature or write a paper right now, whatever have you, but you have no writing utensil? Well, I have this handy dandy pen here, and let's say Osazi has the same exact pen. Again, it's gel, it clicks well, things like that. Well, you're gonna need to find a pen somewhere, but we're both right here, we can both sell you our pens. Osazi, he comes from a wonderful neighborhood. His schools are amazing. He's taking classes on how to sell pens. He's going to tell you why this is the best pen in the world and why you should only buy his pen because it writes better than all the other pens, specifically my pen. He's going to tell you why his pen is better and why you should go with him. Me, not so much. My neighborhood isn't really much to brag about. My schools aren't as good. Half of them are failing. I haven't been told how to use my voice because around 58% of the adults in my city are at low-level literacy rates. Now, which person are you more apt to buy this pen from? Again, it's the same exact pen, but it's the words that are going to make you choose Osazi over me. Now let's take out Osazi, you, and me. And let's take out the pen as well. Let's think of the Parkland shooting versus activism in Chicago. To give some context, Parkland, Florida has a 3.4% poverty rate. The median income per household is over $128,000. The schools there are amazing, and in the unfortunate February shooting, the November before, every student in that high school was trained to debate about gun control. They studied intensively the ins and outs of current gun laws, gun deaths, anything that you need to know about gun control, they were trained to study for. Now let's look to Chicago. 19% poverty rate. The median income per household is around $58,000. Half the schools in Chicago as of 2018 are receiving more state funding and more state oversight because under their own standards, they're categorized as failing. See, you would be the lawmakers in this situation. Which activism group are you going to look more towards? Whose voice are you going to listen to? We have the same exact goal, the same exact idea, the same exact pen. We both want to save lives. We both want change. But only one group was actually listened to. Except this time the impact isn't whether you can write a check, write a paper, or do a signature, except the impact in this scenario is youth lives. So I bring the takeoff lyric earlier to say that if you teach children how to use their words to actually create impact, to sell sand literally to a beach, if you teach words to actually use the rhetoric that you give them, lives can be saved. Reform can be made and change can happen. But that can only happen if education motivates the children to use rhetoric. Thank you.
That carries the charge home. Because it's not just about the books and the test scores, the matriculation fully, and hopefully it is, right? Because if we're not educating our students to advocate for themselves, for their communities, then what is education really, in a real world sense? You've heard from each of our students who we call the what, right? Now, I think you should hear from the man who has the answers about the why. None other than our executive director, teacher, friend, mentor, and guidance counselor on a regular basis, Mr. Brandon Fleming.